And that leads really to the question of the breakdown of clear thinking about political ideologies. I wonder if I could be so rude as to ask you whether you think there's anything really terribly conservative about the Conservative Party in England today.
Well, as I say, these are highly unusual times. There's nothing conservative about its spending habits at the moment. I'm sort of willing to give them a considerable leeway given the situation we're in. I mean, or at least put it this way, were they to behave at the moment in an extraordinarily ideologically rigid conservative fashion when it came to the fiscal stimulus, it's possible not only that it would be exceptionally bad for the country, but a much less significant order of priority, not a particular boon to conservative, the reputation of conservatism, shall we say. I mean, imagine if a country like Britain at this point had government that said, no, conservative principles dictate we must do X, and a load of people were lost their houses and so on, and had their homes repossessed. I mean, I think the ideological scorecard, as it were, has to be very carefully marked at such times. But I take the point you make. Of course, in every country, conservatism is different, isn't it? Because, among other things, the left is different. Because the choice given to the British electorate last December was either Boris Johnson's Conservative Party or the Labour Party of Jeremy Corbyn. Boris Johnson's government looks incredibly conservative, simply because, well, not only because, but partly because it's not populated by, Mao-loving Marxists who thought that, broadly speaking, 1989 had been the saddest year of the 20th century. I mean, we were facing, it's easy to sort of laugh about it now in a way because we sort of saw the threat off, but, we were facing a Labour led by the most extreme political ideologues of the far, far left that the Labour Party had ever been led by in its long and partly noble history. So from that perspective, Boris Johnson's government looks very conservative. I don't doubt at all that from other countries, including Australia at this moment, it doesn't look so. But this is where we are.
Well, that immediately raises the question, I suppose, of where the Labour Party now goes as it laboriously seeks a new leader.
Yes, I mean, it's very hard to summon up any care for which of the sort of creations that have been offered to the Labour Party's membership to vote for is. I mean, this, as you mentioned, this has been rumbling on since the December election. I mean, Keir Starmer is a dislikable but relatively competent figure who may well be the person who leads the party. As I say, it's hard to summon up much care for it. The rest of it, I mean, they all look like, including him, they all just look like, to me, like people who are playing an instrument that's gone out of fashion, or people playing some form of music long after interest in that form of music has passed, and not a particularly good form of music either, I might add. These people who've been having weird ideological battles about the nature of what being a woman is, I just look at this in the current crisis we're in and think, I don't know what you're for, really. I don't know. I mean, maybe I can try to make it more positive by just saying that, those of us who have lamented the lack of political talent in recent years have partly lamented it because this whole way in which, as you well know, we've set up our politics is is to set up a politics that deliberately avoids all of the most important issues, and as a consequence involves itself in minimalistic, deeply fringe issues. And as a result, the talent doesn't go into politics. And throughout my entire lifetime, I've wondered why the political talent has been so clearly drying up. And obviously you have to keep in mind that, if you looked at the Commons at any point in history, there were remarkable people, but most of the place was filled with, not very remarkable people. Fine, that's the nature of things. And you have to remind yourself of that in order not to get stuck in some false memory syndrome. Nevertheless, it's been striking to me throughout my adult life that there has been, that when people entered politics in my lifetime, one thought less of them than one did before, which is exactly the opposite way round of how it should be. That if somebody became an MP, you thought, oh, that's sad. They were a person of promise before that, and that's because the way in which politics had been set up in recent years in all of our countries meant who would go into it? I mean, increasingly, who would go into it if they were, intelligent and had great ideas and were funny and talented and also capable of great depth. And, because if somebody came to you and such a person came to you and said, look, I'm thinking of going into politics, and I know, you say, whoa, that's a terrible idea. On day one, you'll say something, that's true, and you'll be crucified for it. And on day two, you'll have to apologize. Later on in day two, you'll be hauled into the whip's office and you'll be told never to do that again. And by day three, you'd be just like all the other guys in the parliament. And, that's been the case for years. I'm interested through this crisis and after in how we can change that. And one way is to be more tolerant of the danger of ideas, which is something that's been much on my mind. To recognize this is dangerous because you need to try things out, and that the enormous reduction of the acceptable political debate in our time has not been constructive in the end for our societies.
I couldn't agree with you more. I also think that the loss of commitment to particular political strands of thinking, whether you call it the sort of Christian Democrat centre-left, whether you talk about classic liberals, whether you talk about conservatives, whether in fact you talk about communists, once people lose a basis from which they mount their political campaigns out of conviction, out of a clear understanding of where they think the world should go, where their society should go. And the more they're up against people who have similarly lost their convictions from a different political perspective, the more you slide into managerialism.
Yes.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.